flowering leaves of all these life-giving trees that flow in the breeze, giving us the air to breathe, came from the seeds that sons and daughters had sown, passing down histories through stories, genes, and bones. Hear the whispers of the past dictate your prologue, a generational griot through which memories are prolonged. So we reach down like nourishing waters to seek truths, except we receive nourishment when we're digging the roots.
Hello there, Angela. How are you doing?
Hey, Shelley, I'm doing fine. How are you doing? I hope you're staying safe and not going anywhere.
I am doing very good in Virginia, and I'm here to chat with you about digging the roots. What are you doing? What's going on? What are you doing?
Well, I've been going down the rabbit hole, and I am deep in Oklahoma records. You know I do Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yes, that's my dad's side of the family. You know, my Choctaw Freedmen folks.
Yes.
And that's my Oklahoma side. And so I'm just having a good time with that. And I've started a project where I'm researching folks from the town where my great-grandmother Sally was from, Scullyville. The town doesn't exist anymore, but there were a lot of freedmen from Oklahoma. These are former slaves who lived in the Choctaw Nation.
I was going to ask you to explain what a freedman is so people would know.
Yes. Well, these are people that I discovered 29 years ago. The National Archives, it was May of 2021. 1991. That 30 years ago, 29 years ago.
That's close enough.
Getting my math mixed up. But anyway, I had just attended an AUX conference and had been directed to a set of records at the National Archives. And I took off a Friday of that following week and decided to go and see what I could find. And that's what really got me started on Oklahoma. I discovered my family were freedmen, meaning formerly enslaved people who had been freed, and they were Choctaw freedmen. I learned on that visit there were also Cherokee freedmen, Chickasaw freedmen, Creek freedmen, and Seminole freedmen, in addition to Choctaw.
Is that the 5 civilized tribes, the federal 5 civilized tribes?
That
were they part of the Trail of Tears stuff to get to
the
Oklahoma?
Very same people who were removed, from the southeastern part of the United States and relocated to Indian Territory. And my ancestors,
Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, it wasn't Oklahoma at the time.
Right, that's what Indian Territory. AKA Oklahoma.
Precisely. So I'm deep in Oklahoma records and tons of stuff.
What kind of records are you finding?
Oh my God. Well, I have tons of things that I can certainly share with you.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Oh, okay. Well, let me see if I can share my screen with you and let me know if you can see something.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
A couple seconds. Not yet.
Okay. Just let me know, or let me know if I have to do something.
So did you pull the document up?
I have.
You have to pull it up.
Okay, let me just see if I can do this correctly.
And for the folks that are listening, these are our Digging the Root little chats. And Angela and I are going to pick or select specific topics and share a few minutes of your time, give you something to listen to, and hopefully it'll help you out with your research.
Oh, I sure hope so. Okay, well, let's just see here.
Here we go.
Oh, do you see something? Oh, my goodness.
I see you're digging the roots.
Okay. Oh, my gosh. Well, what I've been doing, this time last year, in fact, it was April, I published Freedmen of the Frontier. Thank you. And by the way, volume 2 is coming out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Virus notwithstanding. I mean, hey, let's hope it all comes out. But volume 1 of this 2-volume series was out. It's all based on what you're looking at, that map right there. And if you look closely where it says Indian Territory, that's really an old map from the 1880s, 1890s that outlined what the territory, which is now what we know as Oklahoma, this is what it was really at the time. And which was sort of the result of the 29 years of research I've been doing. Okay. And it's really been an amazing journey over the years. Now, you might recognize this face. You hear me talk about this lady all the time. This is Sally.
Sally.
Yes, my dear heart. I was a little girl when she passed away, but she was my babysitter till I started kindergarten. And even when I was in kindergarten, I went to kindergarten half a day. The other half of the day, I was still at her house
But
until my
Angela,
parents
wait a
took me
minute.
home.
Wait a minute. She's born in 1863.
Yes.
Was she a slave?
Yes,
Born
she
a slave?
was. Yes, she
You
was.
knew a slave.
I did not know that until I found some of the records I'm going to share with you.
Wow.
She was born in the Choctaw Nation in a community called Scullyville, which is what my current project is when you ask me that. But she was born in the Civil War, but look at when she died.
Yes.
1961.
Yes.
I mean, she was almost 100 years old.
Sure.
And here, I knew someone when I was a child who had been born a slave, and I did not know that until 30 years later.
From other people. People need to pay attention and recognize, because I'm sitting here looking at the dates, pretty much in shock that Grandma Sally is born 1863 and not die until 1961. We need to tell these stories.
She was 98 years old, and think of the things that she saw and experienced in her lifetime, almost a century.
Yeah.
So anyway, my research started with looking for her. And this is a picture. I grew up seeing this. This is on an old tintype. And it's the picture of her as a younger woman with my great-grandfather. That's Samuel, the first of 4 Samuels. He was first. My grandfather was the second. My father was the third. And my brother is the fourth.
Now, who is the picture of?
Samuel and Sally Walton. That is Sally.
A younger picture of Grandma Sally.
Great-grandma Sally.
Great-grandma. It's beautiful.
Isn't that amazing? And that image is actually on a tintype. It's on a piece of metal, and it's painted on that tintype.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes.
It's absolutely incredible picture. So I went in search of her and him, or just her, or just him. I just didn't know. I knew that there was a family tied to the Choctaw Nation. I grew up in Fort Smith, which is right on the Arkansas-Oklahoma border. And, we went to Oklahoma all the time. It's just, you go down Main Street, which is Garrison Avenue, and you cross the river and you're in Oklahoma. And so it's that close, and it's not a big bridge. It's something that I just wondered, could I find something? And on that trip to the National Archives, I did, and I was really so surprised. Here's a snippet of what I found. Now you're looking, this is actually pieces of, and I sort of doctored this up. I'm going to show you what the original looked like. Choctaw Nation, Freedmen Roll, and look at the names. Samuel Walton, Sally, there she is, Sally Walton. Wow. Houston Walton. And I never knew who Houston was, but there was a name Houston in the old family Bible. Then Sam Jr. and then Louisa Ingram. I later found out that, they called her Louisa, not Louisa. So this is Louisa. And she was his stepdaughter. But then over to the right, it says slave of. You see Sam's name, and then you see slave of Jim Davis. What does that mean? You see Sally's name, slave of Emmeline Perry. Who are these people? I never heard of these. Is
that before they're married?
I had no idea when I first saw that information. Slavery ended in 1865, as far as I knew. But I'm looking at a record that was created in the 1890s, 1899, in fact. So I was just dumbfounded.
Wow.
Now, to share with you this is the image I actually saw. This has been cleaned up to look pretty.
Right.
This is the actual image. And you see it's all blacked out. It's tape over it, covering up stuff. And it's kind of, kind of not in great shape because you can't really see things. But I was eventually able to find some things and to see what was there. But first, look at the information. You see the names on the left. You see over to the right.
First.
You see some numbers. And when people talk about an ancestor with a roll number, that's the roll number right next to their name. Sally's roll number was 3748. And that was because she was on this set of records called Freedmen Records. And on the document that I sort of cleaned up,
yes,
it says Freedmen Roll. And it's covered up with tape on the original. And this is the way it appeared on microfilm. When I was cranking the old microfilm, this is, remember, 1991. There was no internet. There was no digitization. And you had to crank the microfilm. And this is all that I saw. But then the next image really startled me. The next image, I don't know if you can read those letters as they appear at the very bottom. See where it says additional information on the reverse side at the bottom.
I see it.
This is the reverse side of that card. More names.
Oh my gosh.
So now look at the previous card.
So that's
there are 5
the name
people.
Of Samuel Walton's father.
Right.
That Pat Drennan.
Well, it's Drennard. I later found out it's really Drennan. I guess it's the way they spoke. That's what the clerk wrote down. But it says Pat Drennard. I was like, who in the world is that? And then, of course, it says that DD, which I learned meant that he was deceased.
Deceased.
Mm-hmm. And then something about non-cit or citizen. And then the mother of Samuel Walton was a woman called Lydia. Well, I know the name Lydia from the family Bible because there was a Lydia Talkington.
So she was owned also by the Drennard.
No.
She took the last name of Drennard?
No, she didn't. That's what he said. Her name was Drennan or Drennard.
Drennard.
But notice over to the right, it says, and I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah,
it says Walter. And I know I had always heard that great grandpa Sam sometimes went by Walters instead of Walton. And I'm like, this could be
that's
the
where
origin.
It's coming from.
Exactly. So,
which is a practice, not just in, I'm going to say Indian territory, but number one, the sounds of the words, and we're dealing with people that we would consider illiterate, census takers, roll takers, whatever.
Yes.
And again, they also can take on their own identity depending on what time it is.
And also, in many places, the child's status would follow the mother.
Okay.
So, which is interesting. But Sally was the second name on that card. Okay, you see Sally is on line number 2. So if you look at the reverse side on line number 2, there's the name of her father. This is a woman who I knew was an old lady in her 90s. We never heard her talk about her parents. Here's the name of her father, Eastman Williams. Scullyville County was where he was from. Wow. And notice it says Choctaw Indian, meaning Eastman was never owned. He himself was Choctaw himself. He was not enslaved, which we always knew that Sally was Choctaw, but here's some evidence pointing this out.
Definitely.
And then, of course, you see the name Manda Hunt. From the old family Bible, we see that a woman is listed as Amanda Hunt, who died. Manda is Amanda. And she lived in a county called Sugarloaf, which was next to Scullyville in the old Choctaw Nation. And then her mother was that Emmeline Perry. Remember, we see
mother's owner, though.
Owner. And look at this under the front page. Follow Sally's name to the right, slave of Emmeline Perry. And then look at her mother's owner, Emmeline Perry. Wow. I was just dumbfounded. This is what I saw that day at the archives. And I remember scrolling the microfilm and the images are going side by side and as you're scrolling. And when I got to that card, I remember looking at this page and going, that's them.
There they are, yes.
That's them. That was my reaction. I literally leaned forward and went,
so you mentioned Freedom Row, and you also mentioned Dolls.
Dawes, D-A-W-E-S.
That's which is two different rows. Okay.
Actually, it's not.
Oh.
The purpose of this process that they were going through, and if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of that card, you see 6/20/99.
Right.
That means June the 20th, 1899. That's when they were collecting all this information from Sam and Sally. And I learned later what this process was about. Oklahoma was about to become a state in the 1900s. It didn't become a state till 1907, but it did happen. The purpose of these records that you're looking at was to determine who was going to be eligible to receive an allotment of land so they could divide up the land and then open up the rest of the land for white settlement to come in to what would become the state, the new state of Oklahoma. But this process took several years. And go ahead with your question.
I have a question. On this Freedom Roll form, I see field number 777 in the right-hand corner.
I know.
So
and I love it.
Similar to like our Freedmen Records where they had field offices and people. Okay.
No, not at all. Because this is pertaining, this is again 30 years, the war's over 30 something years ago. And this was to determine who was going to be eligible in each of those 5 tribes, Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole, who's going to be eligible to receive an allotment of land. So they could give some land to everybody on the card. You see Samuel, Sally, Houston, Sam Jr., and Louisa. Every one of them got land, even children, even babies, because after that, the rest of the remaining millions of acres were going to be opened up for white settlers to come in, and the new state of Oklahoma could join the Union, which did happen in 1907. But I didn't know that in 1999 when I'm looking at this.
Right.
That's them. What am I looking at? So let me show you what else I found, though.
Okay.
Now, you've seen that, which is the reverse side of the card.
Okay.
I found an application.
Oh.
Create the same time. Okay. We're talking June of 1899. And let me just read parts of it to you. Okay. It starts out, it says, in read the application of Sam Walton to the Commission to the 5 civilized tribes at Spiro, IT, meaning Indian Territory, June the 12th, 1899. For enrollment as a Choctaw freedman. He was duly sworn, and he testified as follows. What's your name? Sam Walton. How old are you? About 56. Were you a slave? Yes, sir. Who is your master? Josiah Harrell. Where were you born? Arkansas. Where were you at the time of the surrender, meaning the Civil War surrender, and the Choctaw Nation?
Quick question. Sorry to cut you off. So who is gaining this information? Is this the Choctaw Nation?
These are members of people who were hired by the Dawes Commission, named after a senator. I'm sorry.
Dawes Commission is federal then?
Yes, it was. It's called that because it was named after Henry C. Dawes, who wrote the legislation on how to divide the land in Indian Territory. So it was named after him. He was the senator. I believe he's from Massachusetts, but he's the senator who wrote the legislation. So it went on and said, and then he said, well, I was born in Arkansas. And he said, well, did your master bring you over here? And then what surprised me, right in the middle of the page, he said something that I never knew. He sold me over here. I had never seen that, had never known that part of our history.
So
and here he
sold him
in the Choctaw Nation.
The Choctaw Nation.
And then he says, well, who to? The guy was asking the questions. He said, to Jim Davis. Well, what was Jim Davis? Choctaw. And then another man, W.A. Welch.
Right there, that just proves a lot of people don't realize the Native Americans were slave owners, just like the
slaveholders. Yes, that is
slaveholders, slave owners. Yes.
Absolutely. So it went on. The interview goes on. Another man was called in, W.A. Welch, and they said, "Well, do you know Sam? Yes. Who was he? A slave of before the end of the war, before the end of the surrender. I'm not very definite, but it's my memory. He belonged to Jim Davis." And, so he was asking this man who was a witness. It wasn't just Sam saying it and they were going to believe it. They had to bring in a guy who was well known in that local area to be his corroborating witness, whose word would be accepted. And he says, well, do you know where he lives since the surrender? He says, no. And then they asked him again. It says Sam Davis, but I know that's they're referring to him by the slaveholder's name, but it's really Walton. Are you married? Yes, sir. What's your wife's name? Sally Walton.
Sally.
And then they bring in Sally. I didn't know she testified. Isn't that something? I didn't know that until I read this. What's your name?
This is the common application or questionnaire
that they went through
on the freedmen of these five civilized.
Of these five, because there were other people who were coming into the territory, and those folks were, there were folks from Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas. They were not eligible to receive these land allotments. Right. But the folks who had been living there for decades were eligible to receive it.
So this is the only way, and I'm going to say this because there's a lot of myths out there.
Sure.
This is the only way people pretty much can prove their Native American heritage.
Well, it's one way. I mean, because different tribes have different histories. Some people have different relationship with people of African descent. Some from New England to other states in the Carolinas and further down had different types of relationships. Everyone was not a slaveholder.
So this is one way into the to document if your family is one of the five civilized tribes.
This is one way, and this is one subset of records in a very large collection. So then they ask, they're talking to Sally at the bottom. And so, who did your mother belong to? She says Gilbert Perry, which is kind of interesting. I'm not quite sure what that means exactly.
Husband of
and then of Emmeline or whatever. But anyway, this is what surprised me. It says, well, was he a Choctaw or Chickasaw? She says Choctaw. What was your mother's name? And she gives her Choctaw name, Amanda Ananchatabi. And wow, I had never heard that name.
That's your Amanda that you talked about on the other page?
No, I have two Amandas. One is Amanda from Mississippi, the one who's related to Melvin Collier's family. But this is my Choctaw Amanda. And
say that last name again.
Ananchatabi. Well, it says Anchatabi, but it was Ananchatabi. And in fact, I've written a whole blog post looking for the Anchatabi or Ananchatabi connection.
And what's the name of your blog post where people could see this at?
Choctaw Freedmen Legacy.blogspot.com.
Okay, great.
So anyway, to shorten a very long story, the interview went on. They brought in another man who talked about, Dick Brashears, and he also talked about a man called Nell Perry who knew the family. He was saying, yes. Are you sure that the Sam was owned by Jim Davis? Yes. He called him Master Jim. I'm very certain about this. So I was like, okay, wow. But then they still had to verify Sally's history. And this man called Nell Perry came. And he was Choctaw. He lived in, this interview was in Red Oak, which is a small community in the same area. And what's your name, Nell Perry? How old are you? He's 64. Now, this is in 1899.
Right.
And he's 64 years old. And he says, yeah, do you know Sally? Yeah, I know her. And then he says something critical. Who was she freed under? The mother of Sally Walton was freed under my sister, Emily.
Oh, my goodness.
Under my sister.
This is a gold mine of a document.
It is a wonderful document. And I was just so amazed. And it goes on and on. I won't read every single word.
But you could also build the tree right from here.
Absolutely. And I did.
Generations here.
Absolutely. And I got her parents and her husband's parents. And so that's what created
from
what
one
you're looking
document. That goes to every record creates a record. Because look at that.
Absolutely. Look at that. Now, I started out with a black and white image that looked like this.
Yes.
And later I had a chance to go to Fort Worth, Texas, where these original records are kept at the Federal Record Center. Mm-hmm. And then about 5 years ago, Ancestry also went to Fort Worth, and they have now colorized them. They've digitized them in color. So I started out with a record like this, and now I have this record. This is the record in color on Ancestry. And this is the way the original record. See where that tape is at the top?
Yes.
Now you can see what it looks like.
Oh, my God.
And you see it was like a transparent tape that you can look through it.
Sure.
And now you can see Scullyville, the
Right.
post office was Oak Lodge, and you see Choctaw Nation Freedmen Roll.
Oh my
And
God.
so you can see all of that information. And on the back side of the card, you see the smudges. Look at all the smudges at the bottom.
Yeah.
But there's that same information that you now see in color. So I was just really thrilled.
You were able to retrieve that now from Ancestry.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Ancestry.
I thank you, Ancestry, for digitizing them.
So what time frame are these Freedmen records falling under?
Well, these records are part of a larger record set known as the Dawes records, named after Henry C. Dawes. But they really are covering between 1898, when some of these official interviews were actually unfolding. Some did start before that too, but 1898 and 1914, when they finally closed up all the newborns and minor children roles. But I've been focusing on the records. This is the roll.
Yeah.
All of this that you're looking at made them eligible to get on this roll. You see where it says 777 in the upper right hand corner? This put them on this record. This is the Freedmen.
Oh, I see Sally right there.
And you see
in 777.
That is the roll that put them on. And that means that everybody on this page was able to get a land allot.
And what size was the land allot?
Theirs was 40. Every person got 40 if you were freedmen. And there was some discrimination because Choctaw and Chickasaw freedmen got 40 acres each. But if you're on the blood roll, you got 320 acres.
Wow.
Look at the difference.
That's bigger than our homestead. Yeah. For the territories and stuff.
Right.
My folks were in Michigan, and Michigan territory.
Correct.
Then it becomes the state. But the Homestead Act of 1862,
yes,
they had option of the 160 acres. This is over 300.
Right. Well, it's amazing. So anyway, even though they were discriminated and didn't get 320 each, still everybody in the household got 40.
Even the babies.
Even the babies, yes. So
that's documentation people have to pay attention to.
Yes. But of course you have to read the history to find out what was going on, which I've had a chance to do. So anyway, I've been working on just looking at that community. Now, as my current project, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, they lived in Scullyville. Yeah. Well, I've been curious. I've been studying all of the cards that look like this, that are Freedmen cards from Scullyville. And I am studying the slaveholders because the slave schedule was conducted in Indian territory. Many people don't know that. So I can zoom in. In fact, if you go to the site that Tony Carrier and myself worked on together, mapping the Freedmen's Bureau, one of the maps we have, I created a map, excuse me, reflecting slavery and freedmen's settlements in Indian territory.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's on that site, yes. Yeah. And so, and if you click on it, then you click on a link that takes you right to that particular slave schedule. But anyway,
we should do a chat on mapping the Freedmen.
Oh, yeah,
site. That'd be a great one for Digging the Roots.
Absolutely.
This is fabulous.
So I've been working just on Scullyville. I'm working on a project. I've got all the slaveholders. I've gotten all the people who were on cards. I think I found about 70-something plus cards like this from different families, households that came from Scullyville. I also included Sugarloaf because that was right next to it. And there were only 4 families in Sugarloaf, and 3 of those 4 families are related to Sally.
But you know what you actually are ending up with? A community.
Yes, I am.
So if it's 70 people, and then it'd be interesting in how, if they all connected per se.
Well, it is absolutely.
You know, siblings or, you know, things like that.
And you do find that. I'm finding family groups. I'm also finding, well, you know, as you back up, the further down the list as you go, you see Sam, Sally, Houston, Sam Jr. Sam Jr. was my grandfather.
Right.
married my grandmother. My grandmother is from Southwest Arkansas, Horatio, Arkansas.
Okay.
And she's from a huge family. This is the Bass family of Southwest Arkansas. Well, her sister, Rebecca Jane, we call her Aunt Janie. Aunt Janie also married a Choctaw freedman. So I have been looking at the family that she married into.
Okay.
She married a man called Albert Burris. And Albert Burris was a Choctaw freedman in Eagletown.
Wow.
And so my next project, and he was the son of Dave Burris. Well, as you look across Dave Burris's, his slaveholder was a man called Peter Pitchlynn. That's a significant name in Indian territory. That is Peter Pitchlynn.
He's an Indian, Native American.
And he was a major chief. He was principal chief of the Choctaw Nation at one time. And, you know, George Catlin, the guy who did all the portraits back in the 1800s, he did a portrait of Peter Pitchlynn in his native attire. That's also Peter Pitchlynn, the slaveholder of my Burris cousin's direct ancestors.
Oh, my goodness.
So that my next project after Scully will probably be Eagletown folks.
Yes, yes.
Because there are a lot of folks there.
This is fabulous.
It's absolutely amazing. And so, yeah, these things are keeping me busy. And so as you see, of course, the folks in Eagletown, this is the Burrises, and showing that information. Okay. All I can say is that the work continues.
Well, this is a perfect way to end this, and hopefully people will tune in to Diggin the Roots, and the next one will be talking about my work with UVA at the University.
I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
I want to hear about that and what you're doing. So,
we're going to continue. So thank you for joining us, everybody, and tune in for Diggin the Roots.
Flowering leaves of all these life-giving trees that flow in the breeze, giving us the air to breathe, came from the seeds that sons and daughters had sown, passing down histories through stories, genes, and bones. Hear the whispers of the past dictate your prologue, a generational griot through which memories are prolonged. So we reach down like nourishing waters to seek truths, except we receive nourishment when we're digging the roots.